fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's got everything outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taken Anderson! Anderson's up top!
Oh my god! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
It's very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go!
Oh no! That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?
This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Hello and welcome to the iRacing Esports Network with SimSpeed TV here for round 3 of the iRacing Supercar series at Phillip Island. Myself, Jake Byrne, alongside Jay Kennedy here tonight for a 20-lap run around what is, in my opinion, one of Australia's best race.
There we go, that's better. Hello everyone, it's good to be back in the booth again, and yeah, I agree, this is one of the best tracks in the world, not only in Australia, one in the world. So between this and Bathurst, they are two of the best, and looking forward to seeing how this race plays out. It's going to be really cool to see a real short sprint race. First time in a long time I've had a very, very short sprint race, so it should make it really, really fun. The key tonight is just going to be tyre wear. If you can save your tyres, you're going to end up with a great result.
Yeah, that's it. Phillip Island, obviously lots of high-speed corners right close to the water here in south of Victoria. Ready to go racing for 20 laps, as you say. Quite a cold track tonight. We're seeing some incredibly fast laps. It looks like our current series leader, HARLEY, who has 500 points and is absolutely leading this thing with wins in the first 2 rounds, has taken provisional pole so far with a 127.8, which is just miles faster than what we ever saw in the VF around here. So incredibly fast, but it looks like Jackson Suslan-Harlow in the number 1 Altus Mustang has then popped up with a 27.7 and just pipped him.
Yeah, really good lap there from Jackson, and he'll be pretty happy to have that. Not much of a difference, as you said, 0.013 of a second. And you just see Corey Preston come across the line. Great to see everyone has actually put in lap times. Unusual to see every single driver out on track. Other than 2 at the moment have put in a lap time, so just got Michael Taliancic and Scott Solosky yet to put in a lap time here in quali. So we'll see how they go in the next couple of laps. But as you said too, championship standings, HARLEY leading the way, but it is pretty close in the rest of that field there too.
Yeah, that's it. And depending on our soft tonight, each position's going to count, especially in these earlier races in the season when it's all sort of everyone's on the Christmas period. You got lots of people racing. The softs are going to be quite high. So for James Scott, who's second in the championship at the moment, he's only managed to put his machine in P6. So there are quite a lot of cars in a very, very tight sort of 10th and a half to 10th margin between him and HARLEY. So he's going to want to race really hard, try and get past his teammates in Jordan Ross and Cooper Webster, along with Nick Cummings, to try and challenge HARLEY to get some points on the board.
And almost everyone has finished their 2 laps as well. So Brian Borg is about to come around and complete his 2nd lap, and a little bit out of control coming through turn 12, but good run onto Gardner Straight. Don't know if he's going to improve on this lap though, but end of the lap a little bit scruffy, crosses the line, does improve by, what's that, 0.02 of a second. Doesn't improve you any positions though.
Well, consistency is key. It does look like we're going to see a fairly good race, probably amongst the top 7 or 8 guys are quite close. And then there's a little bit of a step back with Kyle Stokes in P9. And then we should see some awesome racing between sort of P12 and 16 or 17 as well. But a couple of guys I wouldn't mind talking about tonight. Brady Myers currently sitting P8. He's quite a regular in this series. We see him every week. He, of course, competed in the Gfinity Supercars E-Series for Fox Sports. But news this morning, he has now joined Altus Esports. So he is teammates with our provisional pole sitter in Jackson Suslan Harlener now. And another guy we were talking about before the broadcast, Jay, who we haven't seen for a while, Bo Cattell is currently in P21, a ex-V8 Scops race winner, or past V8 Scops race winner with ANZ Motorsports. So some names and faces and stories for this 20-lap race tonight.
Yeah, exactly right. It's great to see some old names returning, but as you said, big talking points, Brady Myers, who's currently, will start from P8 on row 4 besides Andrew Gilliam, will now be part of the Logitech G Altus Esports crew. Won the earlier race as well, so he's in a little bit of form, but Jackson Suslan Harlow and Harley Haber front row. Jordan Ross and Nick Cummings, new signing for Evolution Racing Team, they're on the second row together. Cummings will be one to watch as well now that he's in a very, very strong team. Another 2 ERT cars on row 3 with Cooper Webster and James Scott, then Andrew Gilliam, Brady Myers, as we said. Kyle Stokes and Scott Solosky on row 5 as well. Really, really strong field throughout this. Any of these 31 drivers are good enough to be right up the pointy end. It's just such a strong race.
Yeah, that's it. And we do have very cold rubber on the grid as we're going to get off the line here. We have seen some mistakes made in the last couple of rounds with the new line lockers off the start line. So hopefully all the guys get away clean. There isn't a whole lot of room to move off the first few 100 meters here. Just ask Jason Barguana. He'll tell you all about it. But 20 laps here, these guys are going to want to start making moves early as they head down towards the ocean into turn 1.
Yeah, exactly right. And as we were saying, tyre conservation is the key. The only driver that didn't set a representative lap time is Corey Preston. And fresh out of a win in the final round of AOSC, he'll be looking to make moves as well. But one of the shortest races we've seen around this circuit in a long, long time. Only 88 kilometres in length, 20 laps. It's going to be very, very quick. And as you said, cold conditions. We'll be heading into the sunset as the race progresses, which means the track could cool off even more as the race goes on as well. Keeping those tyres fresh and warm is going to be very, very tough.
That's it, and it's a straight-up sprint race tonight, but here we go, 20 laps around the Phillip Island circuit. The revs rise, and away we go down towards turn 1. Relatively even starts up the front. It looks like we've had a bit of contact between Jordan Ross and Harley Haber off the start. Harley's come across and give Jordan Ross a bit of a nudge, but now it's the battle of the cold tyres as they come in.
And at the front of the field, you can see Jackson Suslan Harley Haber, Nick Cummins already making moves. They're breaking away a little bit there from Cooper Webster as there's a car off in the background, big carnage in the background. It's all going off in the background, and that is Rob Bowden around in the 29 car, Brad Newman as well, but at the front is on into Honda Hairpin.
Yeah, that's it. We've got Norbert Leitner off in the background as well down at Honda, but gathers it all up. And then we got another accident. Looks like Sean Thompson coming out of Honda Corp. Bit of a scuffle there. I'm not too sure what happened. We'll see if we can get a replay at some point. Taking a look at our front runners, Harley Haber chasing Jackson Suslan Harlow up through Lukey Heights for the first time and down into MG. This is where these guys are going to struggle for front tyre grip. It's about a lap and a half before we start to see some real tyre temp get into these cars, but the draft is very, very effective in this new rendition of the Ford and Holden supercars. So Harley should be able to stick here with Jackson, but he has got a very aggressive and fast-looking Nick Cummings chasing him down.
We're going to get some replays of the start because, as you said, it was all going off at the start, and we will get a look at what's happened, but we just also saw Brady Myers has had big issues, and he looks like he may be out of the race. This is Rob Bowden in the middle of the pack there. You can see Brad Newman off. Bit of side-by-side contact there with the 18 car. I believe that is Brian Borg, and then we'll go to the secondary incident. Sean Thompson was involved. We'll see what's happened here. Corey Preston already up in a 17th spot. Remember, he started last. There was guys spinning it around with those cold tyres coming through Stoner Corner. Not a corner you see too many incidents at. That's a bit of contact there, but with the Eclipse Sim Sports car. Now, let's see what's happened, though, to Brady Myers, because this is uncharacteristic from him, and a weird spot. There's actually a fair bit of damage to his car, so that's what's potentially caused this issue.
Yeah, really, really unfortunate for Brady. He would have wanted to make a brilliant start with Altus, but it's all gone downhill on the first lap for a lot of guys, and beneficiaries for guys like Corey Preston, as you say, up 15 spots. We also just saw, well, we didn't see, it was off camera, a bit of a big move from Cooper Webster, throwing it down the inside of teammate Nick Cummings there. Cooper looks really, really fast. He's already starting to pull in Harley and Jackson, so really, really excited for this top 3 battle. Jackson looks fast, but now that Harley's got some tyre temperature, we saw last week at Bathurst, Harley seemed to be running a bit more of an aggressive set. So if he can keep the tyres on this thing, he'll certainly challenge Jackson.
You just see there, big issue for Wayne Burke. He's had a fair bit of damage and the car is not behaving properly at all. So he has parked the car as Jackson Susan Harlow across the line on complete the first flying lap time. And Harley Haber is right in under that rear wing. They're still making a big breakaway.
Yeah, James Scott looking pretty fast too. He's all over the back of Nick Cummings. Obviously, James will want to be fighting forward, and seeing that Harley's going to continue to extend his gap. If he manages to finish in front of him tonight, he'll want to chase him down as soon as possible. As we see Jackson Suslin Harlow going defensive into Honda. Harley is all over him like a rash at the moment as they head up towards Siberia. He should have him clear, but Harley really, really bothering him into the back of him at Siberia, and now up to Hayshed.
I also saw James Scott trying to get the move done on his teammate, new teammate in Nick Cummings. Cummings held the outside line, and go back to the front though, because Harley Haber is really pushing and trying to work that car very hard. He's got to be careful not to push too hard. There's a bit of contact there between the lead cars. I was going to say, he needs to be careful not to push the tyres too hard.
Look at Cooper. Look at Cooper go. He's just driven straight around the outside of him. He's going to have the advantage as they head into the last 2 corners though. How cool's that? Awesome move, Cooper Webster there, making the most of a bit of contact between those two, and that'll probably shake Jackson up a little bit, and it wouldn't surprise me if Cooper actually goes for the lead here.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me either. I think we're going to see all of these guys swap positions over the next couple of laps too, as they try and work out what to do with tyres and how hard to push it. You can see Scott Solosky in the background there going side by side as well with Kyle Stokes. Blake Purdy's just set the fastest lap of the race. There's someone you wouldn't think will be in amongst the fastest lap battle, but Blake Purdy back in position 11 has set the fastest lap of this one so far.
I think this front pack is a little bit, they're sort of tripping over each other at the moment, probably not going quite as fast as they could be, and Blake Purdy's just sitting in the draft of Brett Cananzi pulling some awesome laps, but it's an absolute mess as they head up into Honda. Jackson Suslin Harlow is going to retain the lead, but Harley has snatched that one straight back off Cooper Webster, and is now going to look at charging at.
Exactly right, and what they're doing too, they're bringing that next pack in behind up to them. So Susan Harlow, Haber, Webster, Cummins, Scott, Stokes, Solosky and Ross, the front 8, and there you can see that next pack coming in very, very quickly. That's Michael Taliancic, Brett Cananzi, and Blake Purdy. Is, you see there, Kyle Stokes has a huge moment. I must say there's probably a little bit too much chrome on the car. It's making it a little bit too slick through the air and sliding around a little bit too much.
That was actually Sislowski. Sislowski got into the back of Kyle heading through Lukey Heights there, and has half turned him around. There'll be a lot of damage on both those cars, I would have thought, which at a track so aero dependent as Phillip Island is going to make it really hard for those two guys. But looking up towards this front pack, Harley is all over Susan Harlow.
Contact between Stokes and Taliancic on the front straight as across the finish line. So there's no love lost throughout this entire pack. The front 5 have got a bit of a breakaway now after that contact with Solosky and Stokes, but they are fighting hard very early in this race. I think they realise it's a sprint race. They're almost a quarter of the way through already.
Yeah, as we said, Jay, you've only got 20 laps here, so if you fall too far behind, you can't afford to lose too much time. So a few of these guys getting pretty impatient, but Cooper has unloaded Harley Haber into Honda corner, and that is going to send Harley well back in the pack.
He might lose 7 or 8 spots from that. So Haber, this is going to be interesting to watch to see how he gets his way back through the field. We know he's got pace. Has he got tyre life, and has he got the patience to be able to get these moves done cleanly, or will he try and force the issue a little bit more than we would like to see? But that was a very, very interesting incident there between Webster and Haber.
I'm not sure if maybe we missed something because it seemed like Cooper kind of just lined him up. I'm not sure if it was a mistake or perhaps a little bit of a eye for an eye there from Cooper Webster. But either way, big shame for Harley Haber. But who's loving that is James Scott, who now sits in P4. A mistake like that or an incident like that is going to really help James Scott in the championship.
Yeah, exactly right. That'll probably even the championship up between those guys. So you can just see they're probably just a tiny little bit too late on the brakes there, Cooper Webster. It wasn't any malice in that at all. So definitely a racing incident or a slight bit of carelessness there from Cooper Webster, but definitely nothing malicious. So as you just see Jordan Ross through on Kyle Stokes. So now Stokes is feeling pressure from Michael Taliancic, and have a look at who's right there as well. Harley Haber ready to get moves done.
Yeah, and the red mist will be descending for Harley Haber. He'll want to make some moves straight away. It wouldn't surprise me if we see him throwing straight down the inside of Mike Taliancic here, or perhaps even the outside heading into. There's not really much he can do. They're 2x2x2 in front of him. But,
what a move.
He's profited on the exit, but there's a bit of an overlap heading into Siberia, but Harley drives it in deep. But Taliancic drives it in deeper, and unfortunately Harley Haber is going to be on the road twice in 2 laps, and now we have a further accident on corner 8.
Yeah, Taliancic come together there with, I believe that was Solosky, and then there was all sorts of carnage going on. Cananzi went around, but big winners out of that little incident there. Zach Hanlon, plus 18, now up into P7. I was talking to him before the race. I said it would be about time if he got some good luck as opposed to just bad luck in this series. Well, he's got it tonight so far with the absolute parting of the sea in front of him to get those positions. Corey Preston, now other big mover. Oh no.
Yeah, I actually just, as you spoke about Zach Hanlon, I wanted to go check in on how Corey was going, and it looks like he's approached MG backwards with a little bit of help from Brad Newman, and unfortunately Mike Taliancic was in there too wide and has had just nowhere to go but straight into Corey. So that will be both of their races done, unfortunately.
Replay on screen here. This is the incident that brought about that huge change of positions in that mid-pack. So you can see Taliancic coming together there. It was actually Kyle Stokes that made side-to-side contact. Brett Cananzi facing the wrong way as well. So that was a little bit messy from all of those guys. But when you're racing this hard and this fast and this close, you expect messy incidents, but probably a little bit careless from some of those guys there. Just a little bit too messy.
Yeah, it is fortunate we do have a long championship here, but Phillip Island tends to be one of those tracks where we see quite a lot of guys come out. So from a championship perspective, you can't really afford to throw this race away. I know I competed in this series 2 seasons ago and was fortunate enough to win it, and Phillip Island was one of my biggest points hauls. I think I scored about 240 points that week. So for anyone up the front, and particularly for Harley Haber, who's just had a race go from good to bad in a matter of laps here, this race is really going to hurt him. And we see James Scott last couple laps has been pushing really hard. It looks like he's actually dispatched of Nick Cummings this lap, so he's going up towards the front wanting to profit on these gains and try and pass Harley Haber for the championship.
Yeah, and looking at how many points he'll get at the moment just from this race, it's right about 60 points advantage, 3rd to 10th. Of course, there's other races throughout the week that could mix up how that points haul comes about, but of course, you want to win the biggest race of the week. Or get the most points you can out of the biggest race of the week, because it is so crucial to getting your championship off on the right foot. As I just see Brad Newman through on Norbert Leitner. So Brad Newman getting his recovery drive. Remember, he was last or second last on lap 1. He's now back up into 14th. There's been so many mixed up drives throughout this field. Blake Purdy plus 15, David Toth plus 16, but Zach Hanlon plus 18 positions.
Yeah, I think Hanlon and Purdy, I think they're pretty much the only two who started in the back half of the field who haven't been involved in some kind of accident, which is why they've actually managed to profit so nicely here. So awesome run from Zach. He'll be over the moon at the moment if he can keep this thing in a straight and narrow run for the next 12 laps. But yeah, James Scott is looking, I probably would dare say he's maybe the fastest in the top 3 at the moment. He's really chasing down Cooper Webster. Jackson's sitting pretty there in P1, not really being caught by Cooper, but I don't expect that if James gets to Cooper, that Cooper will make it too hard. So this is going to be a really interesting next few laps.
Yeah, well, Cooper's not quite as close in that championship fight. So, I mean, we are so early in the championship. They're all in the championship fight at this stage, but you know, anything can happen in this championship too. You can see drivers just have bad luck for 2 weeks. And Zach Hamlin's a perfect example. First 2 weeks got taken out, 2 incidents that he had nothing to do with. That can happen to one of these front guys that are in with championship contention. It just throws a massive curveball at how the championship plays out. So capitalising on these races is so crucial. And, James Scott looking really strong again, fastest out of these front 7 or 8 drivers at the moment. So he's looking really good. Brady Myers has come back out on the circuit after those early issues, and he's actually punching out fastest laps in the field at the moment. So Brady Myers is trying to recover a few spots, but he's already 4 laps down. I don't think he's going to recover too much. So Harley Haber gets 2 spots. There's an incident there between Kyle Stokes and Andrew Gilliam by the looks of things. Kyle Stokes has just lost a few spots.
Yeah, it looks like Harley's actually just got into the back of Kyle coming down into Honda, and that's put him off the road, unfortunately. So Harley's having, needless to say, a very bumpy ride in this race. He's got to be careful. Even being a short race, nowadays you get penalised if you head over a certain amount of incidents. So I think that's probably 4 4Xs at least now for Harley, so he's got to be very careful heading towards the second half of this race that he doesn't land himself a pit lane penalty.
Yeah, exactly right. Drive-through penalty at 17 incidents, so he probably isn't too far away. And there's, as you just said, the move done very easily. Cooper Webster on the brakes early into turn 1, lets James Scott through. James Scott now can hunt down Jackson Suzlin-Harlow. He's got half the race to do it. I reckon he's going to be there with about 2 laps to go, and that's going to be an interesting fight. Will he have the tyres to be able to get a move done? Jackson Suzlin-Harlow now probably just has to conserve his tyres, and he should take this race away. But James Scott doing a very good job, and there'll be a little bit of pressure building for Jackson Suzlin-Harlow because he'll know how quick James Scott is in the background.
Yeah, that's it. Jackson's in racecraft situations, he does tend to make a few mistakes, but he isn't someone who's easily rattled, so I don't think it'll be too much of a problem for him. But historically, at least at Phillip Island, ERT, they haven't made the fastest setups, but they've always had really good tyre life here. So hopefully for James, and hopefully for the sake of us having a really awesome race for the lead, he's able to look after those rear tyres, chase Jackson down, and take it to him in the last 10 laps of the race.
Got to change of position back in the field. Stevie Anson through on Sean Thompson, so these guys recovering after incidents early on. And Kyle Stokes now trying to get his positions back with that... we can't call them Holden Cruisers anymore. Remember, we used to call them the Cruise when the FG lose the boot. We can't really say that anymore. The ZB without the boot. He's hunting down Brad Newman, who's back up into 11th position, but Kyle Stokes does look fairly strong on this lap.
Yeah, it does seem that the ERT cars in this race, they seem to have a setup that does preserve the tyre a little bit more. Last lap by between our front two, James Scott pulled a 10th.5 on JSH, so it does look like we're going to have a bit of a fight for the lead here, and it does look like these ERT cars have some good tyre life.
Yeah, exactly right. So a 29.8 versus a 29.6 for Suzlin-Harlow and Scott on that last lap, down to a second, separating those two cars. I must say the ART cars look pretty cool with the chrome and the matte difference between you can see between James Scott and Cooper Webster. It'll be great to see all the different skins coming out throughout the next couple of months as well as we head into V8 Scott's season. So going to be some cool looks on the grid next year now that a few of the painters have worked out how to get the spec maps all working and the new looks for the cars. It's going to be an exciting year, 2020, with all the different things that we've got coming up with these cars and how it'll all play out.
Yeah, we saw the Altus liveries come out as well this week, I believe, on the Mustang, and I actually quite like that that Mustang that Jackson's running there. It looks really nice, as well as Zach Hanlon, who again is sitting nice and happy in P7 after starting all the way in the back. But it looks like James has made a couple of mistakes this lap. I'm curious to see the margin as they go through here. It looked like he had a really solid start, but yeah, Jackson's actually pulled a 10th on him this lap. He's at about that 1.2 second bracket, so if James can put a couple good laps together, he's going to start to really gain benefit from the slipstream. So in terms of putting himself in contention for the win of this race, James Scott, this next couple of laps is going to be really important. I think he's really got to put his head down, get into that toe and start benefiting from that.
Yeah, exactly right. Another driver that is actually driving very well the last couple of laps, Scott Solosky's closing in on Jordan Ross, so don't be surprised to see Solosky in a fight for the top 5 or in this 5th place battle. Have a look at how much better Solosky looks on the brakes. Just actually overcooked it a little bit there, so I've talked him up too much. But that last lap, he did look a lot stronger, and the draft in that Trick Sim Sports car looked really, really good. He was able to gain huge chunks of time. So Scott Solosky will be one to watch in these next couple of laps too. But we're starting to get some real big battle packs throughout the field now. We saw the field had spread quite a lot as Rob Bowden goes straight ahead at turn 4 down at Honda. So he's rejoined the circuit, lost a couple of spots. But Brad Newman, Andrew Gilliam, so they're broken away from Kyle Stokes. And Brad Newman, this would be a great recovery drive. If he can get himself back into a top 10 position, that's an incredible drive.
Yeah, well, he qualified P12, and I think he was backwards on that first lap. So
yeah, turn 2, he was backwards.
In front of where he to be in front of where he qualified, despite all that, it says a lot about how well Brad's driving, but also how much carnage we've seen in this race. So he's all over the back of Gilliam. I think you'll have him pretty comfortably. He's hit the apex a little bit better through the last corner, got a bit better drive, and with the toe, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him make a move down into 1. But Gilliam putting the car in the middle of the road. It's going to have to be Newman to the outside. This is tight through 1. Gilliam's in deep. Newman's going to get a bit of a crisscross, bit of a
have a look at the slide.
Bit of a slide in the mid-corner from Gilliam, but he holds on. It's going to have to be another lap and another corner for Brad Newman, and he gets a good run out of the southern loop. He might have a crack into Honda. This car, you can't dive bomb quite as hard as what you could in the VF, but Gilliam's in the middle of the road. There's a complete roadblock for Newman, but he's going to have a crack into Honda anyway. Nice and steady under brakes, and he should be able to get that move done, albeit with a slight tap at the apex. Newman up to P10.
And Kyle Stokes is trying to take advantage, but he won't be able to get the move done. So, well, side by side, still good exit out of Siberia there for Kyle Stokes. So they're going to go side by side into Hayshed, which is never the best idea, and great job from Gilliam to pull out of that. So Gilliam loses 2 spots based on the draft advantage that Brad Newman had up into the top 10. Great job. Last lap by the leaders, Susan Harlow a 9.9, James Scott a 9.7. So 0.2 of a second back in the favour of James Scott. Oh no, Kyle Stokes has been turned around. The exit of MG.
Yeah, he was doing so well. To be that fast at a track like this with no rear wing, just ask Matt Charter what these cars are like to drive without a rear wing. They're not particularly good fun, so he was doing really well, but unfortunately those two have come together down at MG. But James Scott, another 10th quicker than Jackson Suslin Harlow, just as we're looking at this replay between those two. He's right in that draft range now. He's about a second back. This is the time James Scott needs to start pushing. We've got 7 laps to go. 7 laps is not a long time at Phillip Island. This is a very fast and reasonably short lap, all things considered. Not a lot of passing spots, so James needs to make the most of every corner of every lap, get into that slipstream, and have a crack.
And he's pretty much lost all of that advantage he's built up over the last couple of laps at the exit of Honda Hairpin. He's gone from 0.9 seconds back to now 1.3, so 1 corner's pretty much cost him 4 laps work. He's going to have to work really hard to close that gap in now, but as we said before, Susan Harlow is susceptible to making those very, very minor mistakes. So, you know, anything could ebb and flow in this race. We'll see how it plays out, but Jackson Susan Harlow, James Scott, the battle isn't over, but it's just at a lull again for the next couple of moments. But Scott Solosky's closed that gap back in again. It's stretched out to 1.3 seconds, back into half a second again. Solosky and Ross, they're both making mistakes at completely opposite spots of the track. It's bringing them closer and further apart throughout the lap. So Solosky's well and truly in the draft, and look how quickly he's closing up.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird. We're seeing a lot of guys making, you know, a lot of mistakes. These are drivers who you typically see sort of in the top 15 of Scops. So, albeit they're not the Phil Sells and Downs, they're very, very fast guys that you don't typically see make this many mistakes. A lot of inconsistency throughout the field at the moment. So, I'm not sure if maybe being on such a cold track where you're driving so fast through these corners, it's just a little bit too close to the limit as the tyres start to go away, and just breeding a lot of inconsistency. I know we're going to have that next week at Watkins Glen, where we will probably see extremely high track temperatures on an extremely high speed track. So lots of mistakes, but we see a bit of a moment with Blake Purdy down at Honda corner there, manages to get it all gathered up and tucks in just behind Harley. Harley on a bit of a recovery drive.
Yeah, it's interesting how the track has evolved throughout this race too. I mean, the track temp's dropped 1.5 degrees since the green flag too, so it'll probably be playing in the minds to a couple of these guys that maybe haven't driven a race run yet too. And as you said, next week at Watkins Glen, a longer race as well, so that'll be an interesting transition from here to there next week. And those drivers that put in the practice laps will really pay off for that. So be interesting to see how next week plays out as first race of 2020 next week in this series. So I'm looking forward to that. It's actually our last broadcast for 2019, last broadcast of the decade tonight here on SimSpeed TV.
Yeah, that's mega. It's been a pretty interesting decade for old V8s Online, SimSpeed, and now on the iRacing Esports Network. A lot of broadcasts. It's a bit fitting that I guess the first broadcast of the decade was at Phillip Island, and so was the...
Yep, the V8 at Phillip Island was the first and is the last, actually, our 137th broadcast on the iRacing Esports Network this year. So I'll have a few stats coming out tomorrow about how busy a year we've had, our biggest year yet. Just a little bit of contact there between David Hoth and Andrew Gilliam coming in through turn 1, as well as there's a little bit of contact there between Bo Cattell and Norbert Leitner. Leitner's been a punching bag throughout this race too. You can see him without the boot lid on his car too, but he's been a punching bag and a half in this race. So we'll see if he can hold on to this race. So, those guys that were involved in that battle with Andrew Gilliam, they're fighting it out too. The battle of the Euros on track at the moment between David Hoth, Matthias Havdahl.
It is good to see that we've got some international interest in the Supercar and iRacing with the rendition of the new car. We're seeing a few names that we haven't seen in some time. David Toth is quite a quick driver. I've raced him before in the Porsche. By no means a slow guy, but just taking a look at our front pack, James Scott just doesn't seem to be able to puncture this 1 second bracket to Jackson. He's pulled 2/10 out again that lap, but again, only a second back, and we're coming up on some lap traffic, which may help for James, but really tough. He just needs to stop making mistakes when he gets close and he'll be able to use that toe and get up towards JSH. But looks like this lap so far so good, but yeah, about that second mark, I'm wondering if maybe the aero is starting to play a bit of a fact here. Looks like that ERT car is struggling with a bit of understeer on entry, and when he starts to puncture that sort of 1 second slipstream, that can get a lot worse as all the front aero is taken away from the car. So I'm curious to know if perhaps that's why we're seeing James make these mistakes when he gets close.
Yeah, exactly right. That's a very good point. And you can also see that he's making a little, as you said, the understeer into the corner, having some big brake lockups at the front through both hairpins as well. So probably hasn't quite got the setup 100% dialed in for the race spec. 3 laps to go. This race is flying by. We're only 25 minutes in. It's going to be an under half-hour race for the first time in 3.5 years. This is the shortest race in 3.5 years in this series. So nice to have some interesting short races. So been a little while since we've done the short ones. We used to have a few short ones back in the day, half-hour races. I remember we did a half-hour race at Spa once. I think it was like 11 laps or something. It's a very quick one.
I remember the classic ones they used to do at Road America, where it was like 9 or 10 or 11 laps or something like that, which generally was actually one of our season enders as well. And that was the one night of the year, especially in the prime time of the old V8, where you could pretty much do all 3 Monday night races and not feel completely exhausted afterward. It was a lot of good fun. I'm a big fan of a short race, but unfortunately, I think this race is going to be a little bit too short for James Scott. He's managed to finally puncture into that 1 second bracket, but he's got 9/10 to claw in 3 laps, with how consistent JSH is driving. I think it's going to be pretty much impossible for him.
Yeah, and again, that 1 second gap live is stretched out even further, so it's out to about 1.2 live. Is just seeing a few cars been involved in an incident at Honda. It's Jordi Sabina around, and it's just as Rob Bowden comes through, he's made contact with him as well. And being on the grass, we know in this iteration of the car and tyre that being on the grass, not a place you want to do unless you enjoy ice skating.
I can actually testify here though that being on the grass here in real life is like on ice as well. Having been backwards at about 200 k's an hour coming out of turn 1 here, but still very scary. But yeah, you're dead right with James Scott. He's lost 2/10 again, right as he's got to about that 1 second mark. So I'm very curious to know if that is a bit of an aero problem, but I think this is actually, we need to talk up JSH a little bit here. He's driven extremely consistently despite the pressure. The last sort of 10 laps of this race have all been sort of within a 2/10. So really well driven race, and if he does manage to come away with this win, he's done absolutely deserves it.
Yeah, 100%. He's driven very, very well. Of course, started on pole. Been very, very consistent. Another driver that we probably should talk up is Blake Purdy. As we said, he did the fastest lap. He's currently in P9, but he's starting to feel a little bit of pressure from behind. Brad Newman is a little bit quicker out on track at the moment. Blake Purdy's tyres look like they may have started to fall off the cliff. I don't know if he's going to be able to hold on for P9, because look at that last lap time. 0.6 of a second quicker was Brad Newman. I think Newman might get Purdy. Half a lap to go. This is going to be a very, very tight, interesting battle for this last lap.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jay. Our top sort of 6, I think, is pretty much locked in. We're not going to see much happen there. Then you've got Zach Hanlon with that awesome drive up so many spots, just sitting sort of in a bit of a void there in P7. But then you've got Harley sitting P8 on that bit of a recovery drive. But then your closest battle does seem to be between those two for P9. So let's see what Brad takes out of him this lap. He's got a bit of a toe down this front straight as we commence our final lap of this race. Blake weaving down the straight, trying to break that toe. Not a bad idea, to be honest, with how strong it is here. But another 0.3 that lap from Brad. So Blake switched on a little bit more, but he's very deep into 1. I think it could be on.
Yeah, I think it will be on. It's getting very, very close, and you can see Blake is really struggling with that car. Purdy's really trying to hold on, literally just hold on to the tyres. The rears are starting to really struggle. So got limited grip, can't get the drive out of the corners, and he's just starting to brake a little bit earlier too. So he's really holding on for dear life. The gap at the front is closing, but I don't think it's going to be enough. This is where the battle is at between Blake Purdy and Brad Newman. Who's going to come out top here?
He's having a dip on exit. The only place he can do this, though, is MG, and that's a very committed move in any car around here. So I think he's going to have to drive it in through Lukey Heights quite deep to make that move work into MG. We'll see how we go there from Brad Newman. He's driven it in deep, but I don't think the move's going to be on. But at the front, Jackson Suslan-Harlow comes out of the last corner to take a fairly dominant win. Just controlled that race at about a second's margin to James Scott, who was P2 in the championship, but I dare say after tonight will probably take the lead off Harley Haber. So awesome result for him as well. Cooper Webster drove a really consistent race as well to finish P3. But that battle between those two looks like it is going to go to Blake Purdy as Brad Newman rounds out our top 10.
Only other battle left to go. Greg Sharp might be able to get one spot. As we said, Norbert Leitner has been a bit of a punching bag throughout this race. I think Greg Sharp is a little bit too far back to get the draft advantage, to get the run down the front straight. So that is pretty much all of our battles done. Very, very entertaining short race. And guess how long it was? Exactly 30 minutes. Jackson Suslan-Harlow wins.
30 minutes and 0.7 of a second as we see him do a bit of a burnout down at Honda Corner and a fairly large accident in the background after the checkered flag. But that is a win on the board for Altus Esports. In terms of the main softs this season, that's their first. Harley's taken the first 2 rounds, so good drive by JSH. We'll try and get a look at all the results, but yeah, definitely an entertaining race. The concentration of accidents per lap, I think, is probably some of the highest we've ever seen. But yeah, Jackson Suslan-Harlow for Logitech G Altus Esports in P1, and then an absolute ERT train from P2 to P5 with James Scott, Cooper Webster, Nick Cummings, and Jordan Ross. Then we have our first Trick Sim sports car on the board with Scott Sislowski in P6. I think driver of the night has to probably go to Zachary Hanlon, up from P25 to P7, 18 positions for him after seeing his teammate take the win as well. Harley Haber involved in a lot of incidents tonight. Our championship leader up until this point is going to sit P8 with Blake Purdy in P9 and Brad Newman with another awesome recovery as well up to P10.
Yeah, then we've got David Toth next in 11th with Matthias Havdal in 12th position. Andrew Gilliam, unfortunate night for him. He was a punching bag as well throughout the night. He finishes in 13th. Bo Cattell in 14th position. Great to see Bo out on track. First time in, I think, 2 or 3 years to see Bo out on track. So great to see. Brian Borg in 15th. Norbert Leitner in 16th. With Greg Sharp, Steve Jansen, Sean Thompson and Brett Cananzi rounding out the top 20.
Absolutely. So as we check over to the last page, some of our more unfortunate guys, Rob Bowden, P21, Jordi Subirara in P22 with Michael Sherlock and Adrian Benito, the last car on the lead lap, and then down to some of our more unfortunate guys throughout this race. Christian Smart, 3 laps down. Brady Myers, again, got back out there, but still not the greatest debut for Altus Esports in P26 with Taliancic, Preston, Stokes, Burke and Johnson all involved in accidents too. But what a race, 20 laps at Phillip Island. Next week we head to a very hot Watkins Glen, a track that I absolutely love in iRacing. So really excited to see how we go there, Jake.
Yeah, looking forward to Watkins Glen, one of my favourite tracks as well. We're running the classic configuration as well, so we're going to see some really cool moves into the down the back straight and into the carousel. Looking forward to seeing that, and it's going to be a very, very cool week because in the Porsches on Saturday night as well, we head to Lime Rock Park, the new version of Lime Rock Park, which should be very interesting as well.
Yeah, we're starting to get towards that midway of the season where a lot of guys are wanting to qualify for the Porsche Esports Super Cup. Lime Rock Park, a very, very scary track to drive in one of those cars as well. And then again, as I say, we'll be back on Monday for Watkins Glen for round 4 of the iRacing Supercar Series. But for now, and for 2019, in fact, that has been Jay Kennedy and Jake Burton for SimSpeed TV on the iRacing Esports Network. Really hope you guys enjoyed the race tonight, and we'll see you on Saturday for Porsches and next Monday for round 4 of the iRacing Supercar Series at Watkins Glen.
This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now. He's got traction. He's got really outside. Both of them. Maloney.
Oh, he's taking Anderson. Anderson's up top.
Oh my God. Oh, big crash. Oh my goodness. Half the field's going to get rolled.
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly. Oh, there we go. Oh no, that's massive. This is it. This is over. I can't believe this. Oh my God.
God, what?